Tonight's topic is about honesty and integrity. Very important topic, and we'll be covering additional points that are related to this topic, including loyalty, fairness, and justice. They all have something in common, and that is about being truthful. Even though in the past we did speak about the midat haemet ve'asheker, the character of truth and falsehood or lying, there's quite a bit of additional information that pertains to this midah, important midah of being honest, and being honest in more than one way. Towards the end, I'm going to cover a little area of honesty in relationships between husband and wife, how to improve the lines of communication by having honest dialogue. There will be some very valuable tips that we could all use, but we can only use them if we believe in them, if we accept them, if we understand them. So it's important to have a good understanding of what these midot, these characteristics, are all about. Honesty and integrity. I'd like to begin with a pasuk that we will be reading Be'ezrat Hashem in this week's Haftarah. The Navi Micha says, what is it that God expects of you, that He demands of you? If we could summarize it, if we could say it in a few words, all 613 commandments in a few words, what would they amount to be? And he says like this, "Gid lecha adam ma tov u'ma Hashem doresh mimecha ki im asot mishpat va'avat chesed ve'atznei alechet im Elohecha." What is it that Hashem wants of you, if not to do that which is right, that which is just, asot mishpat, which also means to be fair with people. V'ahavat chesed, the pursuit of kindness, which includes generosity. Ve'atznei alechet im Elokecha, the words being modest in the ways of God, or being modest with the Almighty. Atznei alechet refers to not only not bragging about your deeds openly and being modest about them, but it also means modest in our dress code, and also it means not to be a hypocrite, because as the rabbis tell us, it's important for one to be as God-fearing as he is in public, to do so and to be so in his private quarters. A lot of people want to impress, and they behave in a certain way in public, in the public eye. Therefore, always strive to be as good as you are in public, but be so in your private quarters where no one sees you. There's no one for you to impress. So in order for one to have true integrity, one has to have this atznei alechet im Elokecha, the true yirat shamayim, at all times. This is a summary in basically in 3 words, using 3 ideas. The Navi expresses what's important in the eyes of Hashem. Rabbis also tell us that when one arrives at the Bet Din Shel Mala, at the heavenly court, he will be interviewed. They will ask of him several questions. I'm always amazed by this Gemara, because in the upper world, in the heavenly court, everything is exposed. They actually know everything about us without interviewing us. Why do they have to ask us questions? But part of the court proceedings involved a certain amount of shame that we have to experience for those mistakes we made, for those things that we did wrong. This shame, this busha, is a form of Gehenom, the commentaries tell us. What we realized then, how foolish we were in doing certain things, in behaving ourselves in a certain way. So in presenting to us the questions, we are faced with the reality, knowing what we did, we're embarrassed, we feel bad. However, it's more than that. Depending on what we say, depending on what our answer is, they will show us what our life could have been like, what it would have been had we not made that mistake. Had we said something a little bit different to our spouse, how things would have looked completely different had we not taken a certain step. So that is when they ask us these questions, they're really referring to a lot more than just an answer to the question. Is, now would you want to see what it would have been like? Let's take a look at the video of your life, and let's go back, reverse, and let's make a change, and then you can see for yourself what it could have looked like, what it would have been had you behaved a little bit differently. So one of the questions they will ask us, one of the important questions they will ask us is Nasata venatata be'emunah. Did you conduct yourself in business? Be'emunah, faithfully, fair. Were you correct and just in your business dealings? Why would they ask this question? There are many questions to ask, but honesty in business and honesty elsewhere, is a very important part of our life in dealing ben adam lechavero, between man and man. Being truthful, not lying, not cheating, not misleading, not stealing. It all depends on honesty. So much of the Torah and so much of our life in our interaction with other human beings, friends and neighbors and family members, deal with this very important midah, this characteristic called emunah, as it is called here, or as we call it, yosher v'ne'emanut, being faithful, being loyal, being honest. And of course, depending on how we behaved ourselves, that is how it will look upstairs. Everything is recorded. They know exactly what we did and what we did wrong and what we did right. All of this will show up. And in asking us this important question, we will have to come to terms with the reality on where we perhaps hurt someone and where we did something that we don't even know the consequences, the repercussions of that particular word or deed. We don't see everything. Upstairs, everything is recorded, so we will have to face the reality of the consequences of the actions or words that were said. They will show us everything, even that which we're unaware of, which we did not see behind closed doors, or who knows what happened as a result of what we said and what we did. So honesty is going to make a big difference in our life, one way or another, in how it will determine the actions that we will take. Unfortunately, this midah has been lacking for a long, long time. The rabbis tell us that one of the reasons that the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed, the Bet HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, was destroyed the second time, was there was a lack of honesty. One of the reasons it's brought down is Lo Charva Yerushalayim Ela Biglal Shepasku Mimena Anshe Amana. People who are not truthful, people who are not honest, ceased to exist. There were not too many of those. And we're talking about a generation where there were rabbis and scholars and great people. Nevertheless, it was lacking. This midah was not very strong back then. And that is why it doesn't come as a surprise that even in the previous Bet HaMikdash, the first one, the Navi, says as follows. Yirmiyahu HaNavi says, Shotetu bechutzot Yerushalayim. Go ahead and take a tour of the streets of Yerushalayim. Ur'una ubakshu berechovotea. Go ahead and search in its streets. Im timtseu ish oseh mishpat mevakesh emunah. Right? Veslachla. Go ahead and find for me, the Navi says in the name of God. Go ahead and look if you can find anyone in the street of Yerushalayim who does mishpat, who is just and fair and righteous, one who's mevakesh emunah, who wants to do things in the right and fair way. If you find one, vaislachla, and I will forgive her. Now, next week is the fast of Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. We begin the 3-week period of mourning for the Bet HaMikdash with the destruction, first and second, as a result of the baseless hatred, as a result of the many problems that existed back then and that are still around. Had they not been around anymore, Mashiach would have come. The fact that he hasn't come yet is indicative that the same problems that brought about the destruction back then are still in existence. So we have this issue of lack of honesty that is still amongst us. The Torah, in encouraging us to do the right thing, says as follows. Ve'asita hatov v'yashar b'nei Hashem. Always strive to do that which is right and that which is just in the eyes of Hashem. What is tov ve'hayashar? So the simple commentary says, hatov b'nei shamayim v'yashar b'nei adam. In other words, you have to satisfy God and humanity. You have to be good and righteous with God and also with people. So be tov with Him and be yashar and be honest with people. So there is a an emphasis on the type of relationship we need to have with the Almighty, as well as the relationship we need to have with our fellow Jews. It is not enough that one is good with God. He prays every day. He puts on tefillin every day. He learns Torah every day. He gives tzedakah. He does a lot of good things. But how about his relationship with his peers? What if he cheats in his business dealings? He lies. He falsifies or forges documents. All kinds of things that people are capable of doing. Right? Misleads others. Or hurts people in so many ways by speaking Lashon Hara, by slandering them. What kind of a life is this? You cannot be good with God and not be good with man. It's not possible to have halfway. And the same is true the other way around. You can be good with people and nice and charitable and so forth and kind, but one may be lacking in his relationship with God. He's not careful with eating kosher in his home, or the woman is not careful with family purity laws. They're great people. They have a good heart. They really handle people very nicely. They have guests over all the time. Very, very gentle people. They as they say in English, they don't even hurt a fly. Right? They're nice, but their spiritual life with God is lacking, either because of ignorance or for whatever reason. So that's not complete either. So the Torah stresses, "Vasita tov vayashar b'nei Hashem Elokecha," in other words, with God, meaning with God and with mankind. There is a second very similar pasuk that says, "Vasita tov vayashar b'nei Hashem," and the rabbis tell us what is the difference between this and the other verse. This one comes to include that sometimes you need to do a peshara and lifnim meshurat adin. Peshara means a compromise. Even though you may be right in a particular case, whether it's in court or whether it's with an argument with a family member, you may be right, 100% right. But guess what? In order to achieve peace, sometimes you have to give in. Sometimes you have to be willing to make a compromise. If that's what it takes, if that's the price of peace, it's worth it. Look what Israel did. It gave away the entire Sinai, which I think is crazy, right? The entire Sinai for a peace which is not a real peace. It's not even a real peace. It has done so much to try to appease its enemy, and of course it didn't succeed because they don't realize that they first have to appease Hashem, and they have to make peace amongst themselves, and then things will work out for them. But they're trying to go in an indirect way, ignoring the real issues by trying to make peace with an enemy that would not exist if they had peace with God and they had peace amongst themselves. But that they think they're doing the right thing, and they're learning it the hard way, that whatever they do that does not make Hashem happy will not work out for them. So therefore, one idea that sometimes is necessary to bring about peace is called peshara, or called lifnim meshurat adin. Lifnim meshurat adin means is not demanding that everything should come out your way, not to be strict or going by the letter of the law. Lifnim meshurat adin means that even though, truthfully, it would turn out to be that you would win the case, you don't have to insist on the strictness of the din being the way it is. You can say, okay, fine, even though I would be right, I'm not going to be so makpid, I'm not going to be so strict, I'm not going to insist on having it my way. I will be forgiving. So lifnim meshurat adin means to be forgiving, or the other one, peshara, means to be prepared to make a compromise. Compromise is a beautiful word. It is something that helps. It is something that brings about peace in many situations. To be prepared not to have it your way. Another term that the Torah uses to stress the importance of doing things fairly and justly is tzedek tirdof. If you ever read or learn Parashat Shoftim, you will come across this mitzvah. It's a commandment that the Torah tells us to always pursue justice. Well, that's very nice. We know it from various other pesukim, how important it is to be fair and just. But why the double language, tzedek tirdof? Anybody want to offer an idea? Why would the Torah say tzedek? Anytime the Torah uses a double language, repeats the word, there's greater emphasis. There's some reason for it. Now, there are various explanations given for this. I'm just going to give you one that you may never have heard of. Tzedek tzedek tirdof. Yes, you were going to say?
Maybe tzedek means
Yes, you can suggest that. Yes. There are various explanations that always do things that are right and just in the eyes of Hashem, in the eyes of people. That's correct. There are various explanations, but here's an interesting one. Tzedek tzedek tirdof. Be careful to always do the right thing, the honest thing, and don't use the approach that many people use, which is what? Hamatara mekadeshet et ha'emtzaim, as we say in Hebrew. The goal, how do you say it in English?
the goal justified the
The end justifies the means, I think. Yeah, the goal, but I think the term in English is the end justifies the means. I'm sure all of you have heard of that expression. Some people like, a particular agenda. There's something that they want to accomplish, but it takes all kinds of means that are illegal to accomplish it. So they say, well, the end is so important, it justifies any means to come to it. Well, that's not right. It's not correct. It's not fair to do something like that. So tzedek tzedek tirdof means that you always have to be careful not to allow unscrupulous actions to replace honesty in order to achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve. It has to be done with complete tzedek. As one of the commentaries says, tzedek tzedek regardless of the outcome. In other words, you might say, okay, I'm going to do the tzedek thing because it's going to come out right in my favor. No, tzedek tzedek, even if it does not come out in your favor. Tzedek tzedek, always pursue and make an effort to do what is correct, what is truthful, what is honest and right, not what is wrong, regardless of the outcome. So before we continue into understanding the problems that people have with this midah, we need to define it a little bit better. What is honesty? Or what is the yosher, as it is called in Hebrew? Honesty and integrity. What is it exactly? Well, if you look at the word, the Latin word for integrity, integer, which is I-N-T-E-G-E-R, that's where the word integer comes from. An integer or integer means whole, complete. Which means we're dealing with a midah, which is the exact opposite of hypocrisy. So yosher and shlemut, or yosher and integrity, is the exact opposite of somebody who's tzavua, as we call him in Hebrew, a hypocrite. Or echad balev, echad bapeh, people who are two-mouthed, they behave themselves one way even though they talk a different way. It's hypocrisy. It's not complete. It's not consistent. And it's not honest. So honesty is really a reflection of an individual who is consistent in his midot, in his beliefs, in every way. And what's important about this consistency, which we'll talk about later, is transparency. You can see it. You don't have to guess it. Sometimes you wonder, is this guy honest or not? You're hiring somebody. Should I give him a polygraph test? Is he a lie? He's going to lie. I don't know. I'm taking a chance. We don't know. Well, I'm going to go through various points with you now where you can actually see for yourself if a person is honest. All you need is a little bit of time. And sometimes you don't have the time when you want to hire someone to go through this. But when you're dating someone, you can see this. You may be able to see quite a bit of this if you know what to look for to see if this person is an honest individual. So what are we looking for? We're looking for someone who, as they would call, the rabbis would call him na'ed daresh v'na'ed mekayem. He speaks about certain ideals that are important to him. Aval gam na'ed mekayem. He actually practices what he preaches, as they say in English. And his conduct is based on certain values, certain morals, certain principles, certain beliefs. He conducts himself. It's not random. It's a conduct that reflects a life that is based on certain principles and beliefs. And of course, when you see this all the time, it's consistent, then you see a certain level of honesty in his behavior with himself. Included in this midah that we began to speak about, honesty and integrity, is also justice and loyalty and fairness. So just a quick description of what these three are. Tzedek, one way of defining justice would be conformity to truth and reality in expressing opinions and in conduct. It's also a fair representation of the facts. All of this is somewhat of a definition of tzedek, of one who pursues the truth, that which is just and correct. He will express himself and he will represent things as they are, without lying, without exaggerating. And also, when it comes to judgments in court and so forth, whether he's a judge or a party to a particular case, there will be impartiality. Impartiality means that he is not biased. He will show that he's completely unbiased. That is also related with justice. Being just meaning doing things for the right reasons. Even though I may have an interest here, I will look away from that interest and be correct and be fair. Loyalty is a little bit different, but it's very related to this. Being loyal to one's friends, to one's family, to one's spouse, to those who have done something good to us, who have helped us, to one's parents, to one's neighbors, to one's employers, to one's employees, and let's not forget the most important, loyalty to Hashem. So loyalty is another description of another type of behavior, which pretty much is an integral part of honesty. Because when a person is honest, he can be loyal and devoted and consistent in his ways, in his behavior, and in his relationships with the various individuals that I just mentioned. So this is a very strong belief in continuously supporting or maintaining a good relationship with those who we respect and who, of course, we believe that we should continue to maintain that relationship with them. And one, of course, who's an honest individual has no problem with that. You know, if this is someone who he owes appreciation for, if he did something good for him, regardless of who that individual is, if this man is honest, he will be loyal, or she will be loyal to him, because they understand the importance of that connection. They understand the importance of what one has done for the other, or what one means to the other in their life. Fairness, perhaps if we can add a little detail about being fair, I saw something very, very beautiful and very correct, and that is, treat people the way you want to be treated. In order to be properly fair, most people want, of course, to be treated nicely and properly. Well, if you can think of that and apply it to others as well, then you're being fair. Fairness is, of course, a much larger topic than just treating others nicely and fairly, but it is related to being truthful, to being just, and possessing integrity. If one has those qualities, then it will be easier for him to be fair towards others. I just wanted to include these additional points, even though they're not necessarily midot. They are forms of behavior. They are beliefs in how to conduct oneself properly. So if the shoresh, if the root, if the foundation is solid, the foundation of honesty and integrity, then it will be almost automatic for someone to want to be fair, to be just, and to be loyal. Okay, so now let's begin with some proof of how do we know if an individual is loyal or not. How do you tell? You meet someone, you speak to them, you go out with them, you share part of your life with them. What are the things to look for? There may be quite a few. I'm just going to point out a couple of them, of that are indicators of an individual who does have some degree of honesty. One who says the truth regardless of the consequences. He knows that what he's about to say may mean that he's not going to get the job.
He got fired.
No, actually there was a study done. There was a study done. Well, that was good what he did actually. Yeah.
He got fired because he's honest.
No. That's it was I think intended to be like that. But that's anyway another time. I don't want to talk politics now. There was actually a study done I saw about, they put together 2 resumes of 2 individuals very similar. On one of them, in one of the resumes, the one who was applying said, I know I have this drawback. And he specified what that drawback, that disadvantage, that hisaron is, that weakness. He specified it. And he said, I realize I may not get it, but this is still my resume. This is the best I can do. I think I don't know how many the employers they showed the 2 resumes. The vast majority hired the one with the drawback because he was upfront about it. He was honest about it, even though he had a drawback, and the other one had a perfect resume. This one wrote, and openly discussed his drawback, and he still got the job. Well, what does that tell you? People are impressed when you say the truth, regardless of the outcome, of the consequences. So when you see an individual who's truthful about some major drawback that he has, very open about it, that says something, regardless of the consequences. Another one is one who is open and transparent with his feelings. This is a big, big issue in life, between husband and wife, between friends. People sometimes want to hide their feelings for whatever reason. They're not very open with what and how they feel, whether it's about someone or about something. For some reason they can't open up, they don't want to open up. It's a problem. It could be a problem. When one is open with an individual and he is transparent about his feelings, how he really feels, he tells his wife, she tells her husband, or one friend tells another, this is the way I feel. Well, that's great that you're telling me, you're being honest, you're being open. This helps at least identify some honesty in the person. Obviously, if somebody is fair, if somebody is open in the way he deals with people, he doesn't hide things from them, he shares his ideas with them, he's loyal to them. These are all very good qualities as well. These are all qualities that will help us identify if this individual can be trusted. Another one is one that takes responsibility for his actions and doesn't blame others. Yeah, it was me. Did you hear of George Washington and the cherry tree? No. There's a story about George Washington having chopped down his father's favorite cherry tree. And the father didn't know who it was. And finally George Washington, I think he was about 7 years old then, told his father, well, Daddy, I don't want to lie. I did it. So his father hugged him and says, yes, it's very important that you were honest, and your honesty is worth to me more than 1,000 cherry trees. Something like that. He was very impressed by his son's honesty. It's very hard sometimes to admit a wrong, to admit a mistake. But one who takes responsibility for his action, that shows strength, it shows integrity. It's very, very, very powerful. Doesn't blame others for his mistakes. Or you have an individual who actually admits and tells others about a mistake he did. Most people want to hide it. This is a different idea. He's not only taking responsibility, he actually has no problem telling people, you know what, a year ago I did so and so. I made a mistake with this. by revealing his mistakes to others, he's being somewhat honest. He's not hiding. He wronged someone, he asks forgiveness. That shows honesty. He's not running away from it. Another way is perhaps if someone knows how to keep a secret. A friend's secret, told him don't tell it to anyone, and he keeps the secret, he knows how to keep the secret. That's also very strong. One of the most interesting things that can happen in life, unfortunately, I say interesting, but it's very sad at the same time, and that is an individual who began as an honest individual, a man of integrity, a good man in every way. And it kalkel, in other words, became deteriorated, became dishonest, became a cheater, a liar, a thief. And you wonder, how could this happen? I'd rather not mention names, but you know who I may be talking about, a very, very wealthy individual who only about a year ago or so was caught with the many schemes and the billions of dollars or whatever that he took from people.
Oh, exactly.
Shh. Right? There's no need to mention names. I think all of you know, the whole world knows who he is, and he's in jail right now. They say that in the very beginning, he was a real good investor. He knew what he was doing, and he did not steal any money. It was only later on, when things got out of hand, out of control, that he had to take from him to pay the other one. Right? You all heard about it, so now you all know who I'm talking about? Right? What? Yeah. What happened? Could that happen, that somebody starts off with integrity, honest, doing things right, and after a while he becomes corrupted? And the answer is yes. The explanation, pituyim. Pituyim means temptations, enticements. There are many things in life that entice or tempt us, and people fall for it. And when people fall for it, they can be dragged to commit all sorts of sins, all sorts of averot. And that is why Mishle has to remind us various times about don't be misled by advertisements of become a millionaire overnight. Or you want to know how I made my first $1 million? You know, there's actually books that you can buy at the bookstore. How I made my $1 million, and you could do the same. You know how he made his $1 million? Because of people like you who bought his book. What is he going to tell you already? What is he going to teach you? If he made a lot of money, it's only because of his mazal. You think he can teach you how to copy his mazal? Yes, of course there are things that one can learn about real estate and how to invest. But if you don't have the mazal, no matter how much you learn, and even if you have 10 PhDs, it won't help you make money. And you may know now one word of English, and you just came off the boat from Iran, yeah? And you can make millions of dollars by just buying the right stock. You don't know anything about this country, right? People like that, you know, yes. They still don't know English after all these years. They don't need to. They don't even know how to sign their name in English. That's what I heard. They use their thumb, right? The fingerprint, yes. That's all mazal. So anyway, people might be tempted to do the wrong thing. So Shlomo Melech tells us, Oseh osher velo b'mishpat b'chatzi yamav yazvenu. He reminds us and he warns us, anybody who thinks he can make his money in an illegal way, make a quick buck, if he does it velo b'mishpat, without doing the right things, b'chatzi yamav yazvenu, in the middle of his life, he will lose it all. I'm sure many of you know such people. They made a lot of money and then they lost most of it, right? Yeah. People make lots of money, but chatzi yamav yazvenu. It will be, because if the money is not kosher, then there's no beracha. No beracha. It won't stick. It won't last. So he warns us here, be honest. It's much better to be honest and to do things right. Tov me'at b'tzedakah, he says, mirov tevuot belo mishpat. It's better to do a little bit, to have a little bit, but it's done b'tzedakah, it's done b'yosher. It was earned the hard way. It was earned by not stepping on anybody. That's better than having a lot, but it's below mishpat. It was not done with legally, in the right way. Okay, so now we have a little bit of an introduction of how important it is to be honest, how integrity can help us in many areas of our life, in our relationship and so forth. And we have some indications of what it takes to be honest, if one is upfront, if one assumes responsibility, all of these beautiful and nice ideas. Now, I'm going to give you a test, okay? Now think about it very hardly. Take your time. What would you do, okay, if you're in front of an ATM machine and there's no cameras, there's no people around, and all of a sudden you see an envelope without a name and it contains $10,000. Okay, think about it. There's no cameras, so nobody will see that you took it. No cameras, remember, nobody there. It's an envelope, no name, nothing. Envelope, $10,000 cash. What would you do?
Present from God.
Okay, think a little bit about it. Present from God, he says. Who told you it's a present from God? Did he? Akol mishamayim, yes, but who says it's a present? Maybe it's a kelala. Right? Maybe it's a curse. How do you know it's a blessing? A gift? Maybe it's a nisayon. Maybe it's a nisayon mishamayim. What is that?
If it's in the public domain, you're allowed to take it.
Okay, so now you're learning halachot. You say, well, I'm going to look it up in the Shulchan Aruch. Very nice.
If the population is more going than Jews, and there is
Well,
no-
we know that there are halachot. Correct. There are halachot. But there's no simanim on this. I made it easy for you. There's no name. There's no simanim, except from one siman, a slight siman, and that is you know the amount of dollars in the envelope. Sometimes the amount can be a siman, because if you ask somebody in the Jewish, anybody lose any money? Everybody will lift their hand. They lost money. Well, how much money did you lose? And where was the money? So there is a little bit of simanim here. There are some signs over here. But what I wanted to hear from you was not the halacha, because the halacha can be investigated, of course. The initial reaction is important. The initial reaction is, wait a minute, somebody right now is in tremendous pain. Somebody is distressed, right? Perhaps I should contact the police that I found this money. And hopefully, unless it's the Mexican police or somebody, it depends where, if you tell them where the money is and how much you found, they may ask you to deposit it with them. And if somebody ever comes to them and brings proof that it's his, they will give it. If not, it's yours. According to the law of this country, as far as I know, if nobody claims it and nobody proves that he lost this money with proof that he is convincing, that he can keep it. Well, would your first reaction be to do so? To try to find the person who lost this money? If the answer is yes, then that shows honesty. If the answer is no way, well, maybe there's a problem in the honesty that is lacking in this individual. Of course, the halacha may say something, but we're not holding there yet. We're not even holding by what to do according to the halacha. We're holding initially by our first reaction. What do we need to do now? People might just easily take it. People may think twice about it. People may not want to have it in their possession at all. It's not mine. They want to look for their rightful owner. That shows honesty. There's an incredible story. I wasn't sure if to share it with you, but maybe I should. I just heard it. It's a fresh story. It just happened recently. And I hope I can remember the details. But it basically went like this. There was somebody that needed desperately a liver transplant in Israel. I think it was a liver transplant, or I don't know what it was. But it was something actually it wasn't a liver transplant. No, it wasn't a liver transplant. It was he needed to have a major operation done on the spinal cord. Something like that. It's actually not the spinal cord, it's where the skull meets the spinal cord. A very, very sensitive area. And the only one who's an expert in this field is an American surgeon, somewhere in the United States. But he wants $100,000 for this operation. Then we're having expenses expenses for the tickets, you know, to fly him in and so forth. So how do you raise so much money? This is a family in Israel that doesn't have the money. This young man's sister decided to sell her apartment. She sold her apartment for her brother, $100,000. And they got the money to pay for the surgery. But we still needed a few more $1,000s for other expenses. So the boys in the yeshiva of this Bachur put together the rest of the money. And finally, the doctor arrived in Israel. In the meantime, something happened. The boys who were traveling by taxi got into a taxi, and the taxi driver, let me see if I can remember correctly, had found in the taxi a pouch, a very, very valuable pouch left behind by some American tourist. And he was, of course, honest, and he decided to give back this pouch to whoever it belonged to. But he did not know who it belonged to. Somehow, the boys who were collecting for this young man who was sick were in the same taxi, and he got into a conversation with them. And they took it upon themselves to try to locate the person who this pouch belongs to. This is approximately the details. What turns out to be in the pouch? It was a few of the tools of this major doctor, the surgeon, that was coming to Israel to operate on that boy. So here we have some coincidence, what appeared to be coincidence, that this taxi driver is returning the pouch, not taking it for himself. The boys who were riding in the same taxi collecting for the boy somehow got in touch with this taxi driver who gave them this pouch to return to the doctor. And he didn't know anything from the doctor, he didn't know about this thing. But anyway, so they're going to do a big mitzvah. They don't even know who it is yet. And in the meantime, the sister of this young man, because she sold her house, she was looking for another apartment to buy, an apartment in Yerushalayim. Okay, so you have some details now. You have a taxi driver who's returning the pouch of the doctor. You have the boys who are collecting for this young man who took the pouch, and you have a sister who's looking for another apartment in Yerushalayim. So what happens was that this pouch eventually came back to the doctor, and the doctor was, of course, amazed with this fact that they found it and they returned it to him, because this was very valuable to him. He said that this pouch was worth $400,000 to him. So this was a tremendous thing. Anyway, I'm going back and forth in the story. The sister who went looking for another apartment figured, how much can she afford? She can't afford that much. She can only afford a little bit. And she went looking for an apartment in Yerushalayim. And she saw, I think she first went to a real estate agent, and the real estate agent asked her, how much do you have? $100,000. And he started laughing at her. $100,000. Well, you can't even buy a half a unit with 100,000 Yerushalayim. You need a lot more. Anyway, she didn't even have the money. The doctor who said that this was worth $400,000 to him, he was told later on by the Rosh Yeshiva, or by the boys, I think, you know what we're collecting for? We're collecting for a young man who, they didn't realize that he was a doctor who's going through a surgery and it's going to cost $100,000, and his sister was sold her apartment to pay for this operation. So the doctor was so impressed. He says, I'm the doctor. She sold her apartment to pay for the operation. I forgive the $100,000. So basically she had the $100,000 which she was going to use to pay the doctor, now to buy her apartment. You're following me? Yeah. So now, okay, but still, she can't buy it because this is Yerushalayim. So far, Baruch Hashem, we have the doctor who's forgiving the $100,000. We have the sister who has $100,000 now, but she can't. She can't go and buy with a $100,000 apartment. Finally, she goes out the real estate agent's office and she sees a big sign, Dira Limkira. So she goes, it's a house for sale. And the guy was selling it for $300,000. Normal, whatever, $350, normal price in Yerushalayim. He had just inherited the house and he wanted to sell it. And she says, all I have is $100,000. He says, you're laughing? What are you doing here? You expect me to sell it for $100,000? This is worth $350. I can negotiate a little bit. So somehow he realized who she was, by her name, or where she got the money from, or how she sold her house. Somehow the story got out. He says, what? You are that lady who was sold her house to pay for the operation of your brother? Well, guess who I am? I'm that taxi driver who found that pouch of the doctor who forgave the $100,000. And he gave her the house for the $100,000. So what do we have here? We have here a woman who was prepared to do everything to save her brother. And eventually, of course, was able to get her money back and buy a beautiful place, more beautiful than what she had in Yerushalayim. She did not live in Yerushalayim. Now, this story, of course, has tremendous lessons. It's not only a lesson in Hashgacha Pratit, in divine providence, how incredible how Hashem put everything together here. It's not only a story about devotion and Mesirut Nefesh and self-sacrifice. It's not only a story about Hesed and kindness. It's not only a story about a miracle because Baruch Hashem, the young man recovered. The operation went through smoothly. There are many, many lessons to learn from this story. What I wanted to point out, of course, what this has to do with what we're talking about is the honesty of the doctor, the honesty of the taxi driver, the honesty of the boys, the honesty of the taxi. I mean, everybody. There's a high degree of integrity and honesty in all these individuals. Good people, honest people, devoted people who are willing to do a very good thing, a very big mitzvah. And of course, Hashem coordinated that all these honest individuals come together for this big mitzvah. Baruch Hashem. Anyway, these tests that we have in life, whether it's $10,000 or any other tests, are always there to test our integrity, how truthful we will be. One has to know that the truer he is, he will feel much more secure and peace, and be in peace with himself than if he were to lie or to find ways to get away with it in a dishonest way. Just a couple tips on how to maintain one's honesty. One is not to exaggerate. I don't want to repeat all the ideas and tips that we gave in speaking the truth and staying away from lies, so I'm just adding a few more. Being very careful not to exaggerate. People have a problem or weakness of exaggerating things more than what they really are. Whether they're describing a friend for a shidduch, or for a job opportunity, or whether they're describing their home because they want to sell it. Regardless, people tend to exaggerate and embellish something much more than what it really is. If one wants to strengthen his honesty, he has to be careful not to exaggerate. One has to make a commitment to be truthful and honest. It requires a commitment. I'm going to be truthful and I'm going to say the truth only. And I'm going to be always honest. It requires a commitment. And that is the meaning of the pasuk. Another pasuk of, I think Mishlei brings down, Chesed ve'emet al ya'azvuka. Don't let the chesed and emet, these midot of kindness and truth, ever leave you. He says, write them down on your heart. Tie them around your neck. Always keep these two midot with you at all times. You will always need them. You will always be in situations that will be very demanding and that will be testing. So never depart from these two midot of kindness and emet, and truthfulness. Now we're going to cover a little portion of relationships, husband and wife relationship, zugiyut, that relates to this midah. It's a very important area. I plan to talk a little bit more about it, perhaps more in depth and detail, when we talk about the midah of tact. B'ezrat Hashem, in a couple of weeks from now, one of the things that we will talk about is tact, to use tact, which is the opposite of chutzpah, the opposite of being direct and being overly aggressive. So this midah of honesty and honest line and open communication is a very important area, especially amongst the husband and wife. You want to be honest. You want to be truthful. Don't tell your wife you're fat. But I'm being honest. I'm being truthful. She's just overweight. That's the truth that will be hurting, that will be painful. You have no mitzvah to do that. But I want to be honest. I want to be truthful. I want to tell it to her as it is, as I see it. No. That's not good. If she wears something nice, even though you don't think it's nice, tell her yes. And she asks your opinion, is it nice? Yes, honey, the skirt looks very nice on you. Even though you don't think so. Why is it mutar to say so? Can anybody tell me why? We're just talking about being honest, being truthful. Why can you say what is called in English a white lie? This is called a white lie, by the way. Shalom bayit, they say, but why? Who says shalom bayit? It's okay. What's the reason it's permissible here? Of course, you want to have peace, but there's a lot of other times and a lot of other things you can say that are not true to achieve peace. Is it okay always to lie?
It's a matter of opinion, I guess.
It's a matter of opinion. That's true. When you go to a wedding and you see your friend, finally you see for the first time who your friend married, and you say he married her. Or she married. What did he see in her? Or what did she see in him? You think, you can't believe it. And nevertheless, the halacha is that you go over and tell your friend, Kala na'ava hasuda, she's a beautiful girl. From a 1 to 10, she's an 11. Why is that permissible? Because of what you said. In his eyes, she is beautiful. So you're making him happy. You didn't. When it comes to relationships, the rabbis tell us that this is not only permissible because of shalom bayit, psychologically, this is very important. It's very important that the wife or the husband feel good. And when you make them feel good, you know what you're really doing? You're not lying, you're being kind. The act of telling the individual something that they want to hear is an act of kindness. So yes, it's a white lie, but it's an act of kindness. And in order to achieve shalom bayit, like you said, it is permissible. Yeah.
What happens if in the party everybody make fun of her? So, your skirt is lousy, it's bad.
Yeah. So you can say something like, it's a democracy. They're all entitled to their opinion, but what really matters is my opinion, right? Your husband. You can tell her what really matters is not what they think, it's what I think. After all, she wants to please you, not please them, hopefully.
Suppose she wants to know the truth.
Huh?
She doesn't want to change it if it's really...
There are ways to deal with it. When we speak about tactfulness, we'll talk a little bit more about it. But you have to be very careful not to hurt her feelings. Because no matter how careful you are, she's going to pick up on it anyway. Nah, you don't really mean it. Right? The women are smarter than what you think. They have very strong intuition. But you still have to do the right thing. All right. So besides being very careful, in an honest discussion, you never want to criticize and you never want to openly accuse. One of the things that one should say, if you want to have an honest dialogue, again, the idea here is how to have an honest dialogue and improve the communication and have effective communication without hurting the other person's feelings, and of course, bringing about an improvement to the relationship. So I saw a whole bunch of tips in a very good article about this topic that I'd like to share with you, which I think really can do a lot to improve any relationship, as long as you keep by certain rules. And one rule is on how do you approach How do you properly approach your husband or your wife that you want to have a discussion with them? You don't say, you are like this and you are like that, and I'm upset at you because, instead of doing that, you say, I'd like for us to have a more comfortable relationship with each other, so I'd like to sit down and discuss with you something very sensitive, right? It's a lot nicer than beginning to say, I'm very upset at you and I accuse you of this and I'm very unhappy because of this and this. Instead, I'd like to really feel more comfortable with you and be happier, and there's something very sensitive that is on my mind that I'd like to discuss with you. That's a better introduction. It's honest, it's true, and it's a way that is not painful. Another idea, step number 2 or tip number 2 is talk about what you need, not about, one second here. Yeah, talk about what you need, not what your partner needs to do. Instead of telling them, oh, you need to do this or you need to do that, you can present it in a whole different way. This is what I need. This is what I really would want to have to be happy. So you're not putting the blame on them and you're not putting the onus on them. In other words, you have to do this, and I'm very upset that you're not doing that. Instead, direct it towards your own personal needs. This more honest and open form of communication, where you present the things as you need it, as you wanting something, is much more effective and it's a lot quieter, a lot softer on the individual. He's able to be more receptive of that. It's honest, it's the exact same thing, but it's a lot softer. Number 3, very, very important idea, identify topics that are off limits. If you know that there's a particular topic that is always getting the two of you into trouble, like money, for some people the topic is called money. Whenever they talk about money, everybody gets heated up. Identify those topics and say, you know what? This topic is off limits for us. For that, we need a counselor, or we need somebody, a rabbi, to help us with. Like this, you're not going to get into a fight about it. So identify the topics that are off limits. In the middle of your discussions, take breaks for 10 minutes. Take a break. Because if you talk a long time, you may get heated up again. You may get dragged into the argument. So take a 10-minute break to cool it off. It's important to schedule a time to talk. Schedule the time. You know what? See you at the sofa at 8:30 p.m. We'll sit down, or in the backyard, in the yard. Schedule an appointment. Don't make it spontaneous. Not everybody likes spontaneity. Just like that. Now you're coming to me. Now when I'm hungry. Now when I'm tired. People always have an excuse. But if you schedule it, it might be a lot better. Another very important idea is to keep in mind that what are we aiming? What are we aiming to accomplish when we want to have effective communication, when we want to really improve the relationship? We're aiming for progress, not for perfection. Remember that. We're aiming for progress, some progress, and not for perfection. And now we're coming to one of the most important points that we've mentioned in the past, and we need to repeat it again. And this one really requires a lot of our attention. This one is called being honest with yourself. A big problem that some people have, and what I want to do in the last few minutes of the lecture is talk about this particular issue, because many people have a problem with it. And if they don't work on this problem, their whole life will be messed up. And they could get a lot of help from a good therapists in this area. And you will see why in a moment. People who are not being honest with themselves. From my analysis, from my studying this particular topic, I find that there are 4 ways that people deal with this issue. 4 reactions on how people behave, people who have this problem. One of them is called repression, the other one is projection, the third one is delusion, and the fourth one is denial. What does repression mean? They refuse to think about a problem that they have, and they would rather bury it in the back of their mind. They don't want to face it. So that's called repression. To repress feelings or ideas or whatever it is that is on their mind. They don't want to deal with it, so they bury it. Second one is projection. They associate the negative qualities that they may have with someone else. You know, like the ones who always blame others for the problem. It's her fault. That's projection. The third one is delusion. Refuses to accept reality of the situation. He's deluding himself. He doesn't want to accept the reality, the way things are. Denial, which is very common, unfortunately, is the refusal to accept the truth. Even though you prove it, it's the truth. Some people are in denial, complete denial that they have this problem. This could be alcoholics, drug addicts, and mehamrim, gamblers. No problem. What's the problem? They refuse, they deny that they have a problem. These people are unhappy. There's a lot of people there who are unhappy. And sometimes the unhappiness is because of a difficulty that these people do not want to face or deal with. The problem is there, but because they don't want to deal with it or they don't want to face it, they continue to be unhappy. And how do people cope with this unhappiness? They try to run away from it. They try to not think about it. They try not to confront it. That is how people deal with it, in order to cope with it. So they try to just not deal with it. Anytime an individual has a particular problem and he's still unhappy and he's not dealing with it, you should know that for him, it's much easier to not think about it, because once you think about a problem, it becomes very painful. So what happens with time, you automatically choose the easier route. Don't think about it. Because if something becomes painful every time you think about it, you know what that will lead to? You'll have fear of that particular thing. It brings about fear. And so this is all subconsciously happening to this individual who doesn't want to face it. He's unhappy. And every time he thinks about it, he's pained. So he would rather not be in pain, rather not be unhappy. So he'd rather not deal with it. And that is why, going back to what we said before, the best way for some of these people is to lie to themselves. So this lying to themselves or not being honest with themselves is a way of coping with this problem. They're unhappy, they're in pain, they have this fear, they'd rather not deal with it, so they lie. In denial, repression, whichever category you want to use, this is a reaction or as a result of their unhappiness. I just want to remind anybody who knows somebody like that they need to be told that if the problems that they're having are not dealt with and are not tackled with, it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. Putting something away, putting something aside and not dealing with it only makes things worse. Eventually it will become a habit, this fear. And when fear becomes a habit, when people are always fearful of something and don't want to face the reality, what it will do is it will diminish their integrity. It will weaken their character. And that is why the only thing that can restore that integrity and build up their character is by facing the reality, facing the problem and dealing with it and coping with it. It's a chaval, it's a real shame. People have sometimes the opportunity to deal with a situation, to seek the remedy, to seek help for a particular problem, and really strengthen their integrity. And because they fail to do so, they ruin their life. So the failure to take the opportunity to remedy this problem can really make a tremendous big difference in one's life. I'd like to just finish that the experts have found that integrity, if a person has integrity in his life, in his conduct, in his dealing with people, everything that he does, and integrity we mean honesty too. Honest in his relationship, honest in his dealings, honest in his business. Just a consistency in his character, in his dealings, never lying, never cheating, keeping his word, keeping a promise, consistent in his values and in his principles, in his emunah, in his faith. This integrity will bring a lot more happiness to his life, a lot more satisfaction and happiness to one's life. It's a tremendous, very valuable midah. The Michtav Eliyahu, Rabbi Eliyahu Dessa Zech Tzadik Levracha, in speaking about Yosher in Emanut, says that a great deal of one's emunah will depend on his honesty and integrity. A lot of scientists today do not have that honesty and integrity, and that is why they choose to not look at all the facts and all the evidence that exists about creation. Doesn't that tell you something? It's so obvious. The more science has become advanced, the more technology we have and the tools that we have, the more it becomes more and more obvious that there's a creator to this beautiful, magnificent world, that it's by design. How could you look away from that? Because of a lack of honesty. And when we spoke about evolution in another series, the 70 most difficult questions of Judaism, I spoke more at length about what brought Darwin, or what led these people to believe in evolution as opposed to something that makes them a lot more sense like creation. And the answer was ta'avot, the desires of the flesh, the immorality, which is a way of life for many people. That kind of lifestyle to them was much more attractive, and they could not live with that kind of a lifestyle if they believed in a God. So some people choose to move away from that, and of course, how could they live with that? By saying it doesn't exist anyway. God, en din ve'en daya. It's okay for anybody to do whatever he wants. Who's to tell me what to do? In this way, they can justify anything they do. But obviously, Judaism, in giving us the Torah, stresses the importance of morals, integrity, and honesty for a good reason. Because all of that is part of our emunah. All of that is necessary, not just to have a more successful life, and not only for us to have a more rewarding life, a more rewarding marriage, a more rewarding relationship with people. In order for us to have a strong connection with Hashem, we need to be honest. Otherwise, how could we trust that an individual will do the mitzvot and will be God-fearing regardless of the situation and temptations that he may be faced? And I tell you that sometimes it can be very tempting. My famous example is somebody who hasn't earned $1 for the past year, and he's a real estate broker. And right now they tempt him, listen, if you come sign the deal, you can make 6% on $25 million. That's a lot of money, no? 6% on a $25 million estate in Truesdale Estates or in Bel Air. So what's the catch, they tell him? The catch is you have to sign on Shabbat. Otherwise, we'll give the deal to some other broker. One who does not have bitachon b'Hashem, one who is not honest, one who has no integrity will say, well, I haven't made any money for a whole year. Maybe I can sign with my left hand. I learned once in Ilchot Shabbat with shinui, with a change. It's a loophole, right? You think you can make a one-tot, like we say with Hashem, you can make kunsim. You think you can... If this money was meant for you, then you would get it in a kosher way. If it's not meant for you, maybe this is a test. And if it's a Shabbat, you better believe it's a test. What else could you look at that? Or what about the guy who finds $100 bill on Shabbat? You can't pick up the money. You can't carry it. What are you going to do?
Hide it under
Huh? You push it underneath the bush?
Put your foot on it.
You put your foot on it? Well, you can put your foot on it if it's Saturday afternoon and you have 2 hours to. But what if it's Friday night?
Can sleep there, that's all.
Huh?
Sleep there, that's all.
Yeah. These are all tests mishamayim. We're always tested, and I always speak about tests. Tests are ways to not just Hashem knows if we're going to pass the test. What is the real test for? Nisayon milashon nes. It means to elevate one to a higher level. Had he not passed through the test, had he not experienced the test, then he would have stayed whatever he was yesterday. Hashem wants us to grow. And therefore, from time to time, he challenges us with all kinds of situations, whether it is anger, whether it's laziness, whether it's stinginess, whether it's honesty, or whether it's some other test that has to do with our connection with Hashem, if we're loyal to Him or not. Are you willing to give your life for what you believe in? And many of our forefathers had those tests and trials during the Inquisition and other periods of history. And our generation, the generation of Mashiach, of course, has its own tests. Many, many sets of tests in a very difficult, challenging time that we have, with tremendous amount of pritzut, with immorality all over that we're exposed to. And we have to be very, very strong. But here, with this topic of tonight, when we're speaking about honesty, it's especially important to be careful when it comes to issues of money. Money, as the rabbis tell us, is the biggest yetzer hara, the biggest evil, the strongest evil inclination. What people will be willing to do for money, as they say in Hebrew, they will be willing to sell their mother sometimes for money. So much so, when it comes to money, people have this ardent desire. And of course, the stronger, the more bitachon and faith one has in Hashem, the easier it will be for him to resist any temptation. If this is meant for me, nothing will take it away from me. If it's not meant to me, then don't worry about it, right? It requires a tremendous amount of work and self-discipline. These are all beautiful midot, and we spoke about that before. I don't want to repeat myself, but the additional detail of honesty is important for the following reason, because honesty and integrity will reflect itself in all aspects of our life. It will reflect itself in our relationship with our spouse, and in our relationship with our friends, with our partners, everything. It will have a lot to do with whether we succeed or fail in life. And hopefully, God willing, if we make a commitment to be honest, then hopefully Hashem will help us that we will succeed in life in all our endeavors.
Amen.
Rabbi Wasserman said, if Doran would have seen the Chavetz Chaim to face,
Yeah.
he would never have said what he said.